and out.
I'm gonna record this if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine. I heard that go. No probs. So yeah, I'll touch on some of the research that we're doing, the reef restoration projects we're involved with, and what we love, which is reef keeping and our beautiful tank behind us. And I'll give you a bit of an update on where things are at. So just see if this lets me go forward. No. Now it's made me go to the start, to the back. Wait a second. Escape. Does that drop me out?
No, you're still on. It's just loading.
Okay, let me go forward. Okay. All right, so with the R&D, the research and development we do on the GBR, that working now, Matt?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. I guess that all comes back to really working with our network. There's a lot of operators over here and obviously on the GBR that we are able to work with using our contacts. I actually worked as for a collection and export company, Cairns Marine, that some of you may have heard of. And through that, I obviously have a very strong connection with Cairns Marine. They're only 10 minutes down the road, which makes it easy for us. And yeah, I definitely find that connection, but also after I left Cairns Marine, I did work for a short period of time as a freight forwarder, perishable freight exporter, to help other collectors to export to America and other countries. So during those couple of years I worked out of the industry itself, I was still working with industry, and that kind of built my connections also with some of the other companies like Monsoon and a bunch of the collectors down south as well. So yeah, over the years, 20 years working within that industry, I obviously have a few different friends and partners I can talk to who are obviously benefiting from what my new role at Triton is, which is helping them run their systems better, give them some really important information about water chemistry. So they're sending their water samples to us. And also, in turn, they assist us, because if you think about us going out in the reef, we've got a boat that allows us to access a lot of different areas out of Cairns, but it's a massive resource. It's really like literally a needle in a haystack when you're looking for some of these unique habitats. Now, having access to the knowledge of the aquarium collection industry, it allows us in science, you kind of say, to stand on the shoulder of giants. It really allows us to then take the knowledge that they're willing to share with us. It's very much with each company, they don't share that knowledge between themselves. So they obviously let us know some things, but we have to keep them in confidence. But they then will point to unique areas that they go to, certain areas for certain corals, and that allows us to go straight to those areas. We've got the lats, the longs, we know exactly where we need to go and try and look at where there are differences, or also alternatively, if there is no difference in trace element composition and changes in water chemistry. So I'm a believer that doing investigation into this side of things, you can have a hypothesis. The fact that you might find that your hypothesis isn't supported is still valid. So, you're still getting valid information, because there'll be other factors that are causing those corals to be living in those areas. So that's really what we're in the process of now. Last season, we kind of have seasons over here with the weather. So coming into September, October, all the way through to April, that's our time to really get out on the reef as much as we can. We do have times through the off season where we go out and we can, little windows of weather that we can take advantage of. But when it's blowing 25, 30 knots, it's not a place you want to be out kind of working. And that's where we kind of use that time. Boat maintenance is important. We don't want to get stuck out there because our engines stop working. We like to set up the deck of the boat to make sure we can do our sampling in the quickest, most efficient way. So we did a lot of work, I guess, this last few months, just kind of setting things up to do what we've been doing, but more efficiently, which allows us to cover more ground, gather more data, and that really helps us to get to the bottom of some of the things we want to check. So we also work with a lot of industry professionals. That's something that's important. I think that the aquarium industry has a lot of, again, equipment. What's behind us here is all through our connections with the different hobby industry professionals. And that's a very important part to allow us to do even the work we're doing here with our own aquarium and what we test, because we use this as a testing tool as well. This is not just for us to look at and enjoy. We can also try different things on this aquarium and get a bit of a feel. Then we can go to a further level of testing with other systems that run the TRITON method. So we've got a standardized filter and see how other systems, different corals react to some of the things we want to try out. So we also have, I suppose, connections, partnerships with the Australian government. We're doing some work with testing for Australian Institute of Marine Science, AIMS. We've done testing for CSIRO. CSIRO is more, they look at more aquaculture, more of the farming side of things. So they're primary industries, but they often send us samples when they have kind of like little departments where they're testing different things that they want to help industry with, and testing their water to a ICP standard allows them to try to play with a few of their parameters and get some work done there. So academia, we also work with universities. We have a project we're working with the Tasmanian University that are doing the tropical rock lobster, and they actually are spawning the lobster in systems, research systems, and they are, from what I understand, it's the hardest of all it's like the holy grail of aquaculture. It's actually the different life cycles and stages of the larval cycle, and the different foods you need to feed at different levels of that is really intricate. So if they can take water chemistry out of the equation from their side of things, they can focus on what they need to focus on. And that's where we help a lot of those universities to actually do their work. I'm just going to go, I don't know why this isn't moving forward. Okay, it's frozen on me. I'm obviously a biologist, not a tech guy. Let me just, I might have to get out of there. Okay. And then yeah, so I guess coming back to the work we're doing, knowledge of habitats is important. Sorry. And that's, can you see that guy still? Can you see it, Matt?
Yes, I can. Yep.
We can
Yeah,
see
I'm just
him.
going to leave it like that because this is allowing me to then move forward. Yeah, so knowledge of habitats is key. Like I said, we lean into the knowledge we have with the collection companies. We also are out there if we're seeing different times of the year, we're seeing different seasonal changes. That allows us then to take advantage of those and take water samples. We did actually notice after the last wet season, we had a phytoplankton bloom that went all the way out to the edge of the continental shelf. So that was quite a unique time that we were able to kind of look at different factors that are part of coral feeding, I guess, and some of the nutritional side of things. So you've got to be out there and really see and take advantage of the opportunities when you are there to really see what's different to what's standard. The more you're out there, the more you understand what kind of standard expectations you have. And then you are a bit more aware of when something's a bit unique and a bit different. Again, I mentioned I worked for Cairns Marine, large facility collecting fish, coral, invertebrates, and exporting to all countries around the world, and many countries around the world, a lot to the US. It was working there for the time I was there that I actually learned a lot about coral husbandry. I was also many moons ago when I had hair. I was part of the educational process we did with the local schools. And I guess that's part of where I gained a real appreciation for being able to share knowledge with a wider audience. A part of what we do is really pulling all the threads together. So like I said before, all the knowledge we have, the partnerships we have, it's really about, getting all those different groups and be able to work with them to actually gain the knowledge and really push forward as we can, as fast as we can, because time is money and we haven't got a never-ending bucket to work with. We really are funded by Triton, the business Triton. So in a way, the testing that you guys do, the products, if you're using Triton products, that all in a way filters back to give us the capacity to then go out and do some of the work we're doing. So it is a limited amount that we can throw into it. We're not government funded. We need to self-fund for everything, but in a way, it's kind of crowd-funded by the hobbyists that are involved, either just testing or if you're using the products, the Triton product range. So the second part of, I guess, what we get caught up in a day-to-day work here is coral restoration projects. So we're providing support for multiple restoration projects around Australia. One such project that we're very involved with is the Forever Reef project. That's got the support of Dr. Charlie Veron. I don't know if everyone might know Charlie. He's very strongly involved in the Forever Reef project. And what they do is they are in the process of setting up they've got a coral bank. Charlie goes out on the boat and they collect different species. They're trying to collect as many SPS. They're predominantly working with SPS coral, and really focus on getting, hard coral, not just SPS, but they're going out, they're collecting these corals on a specific site. They're keeping the lat and longitude and their identification of the coral. They're then actually putting those frags onto plugs, which have a microchip that's got the latitude and longitude and the species that they've called it. And then from there, they bring it back to their system and they hold them, frag them, grow them, and genetic test them. So that's another thing. They've just been going through some work with the Smithsonian, and they've sent all the ones that all the frags, different species they have, and they're actually seeing if the genetic work comes back to agree with what they've identified them as, or Charlie's identified them as. So I think there's going to be some very interesting work come out of that. And I know that Dr. Tom Bridges, he's actually doing a lot of work genetically with the Australian Museum or Queensland Museum to actually look at the genetics of the corals we have here on the GBR. And I believe he's releasing some information. He's already finding new species that aren't found anywhere. And that's very exciting. That's coming out soon. So what they're doing is very important. It allows scientists to be able to actually access some of these corals. They can do genetic work on them. They can use them down the track if there is a need for restoration back on the reef, which at the moment isn't allowed. That's an Australian government rule. You're not allowed to put coral back on the reef. We're not at that kind of level where I guess Florida is kind of at the moment. But yeah, if there's a need, the aim is to have multiple banks like this. And that's something, I'll show you some photos at the end here. I've got some photos of their kind of headquarters, which is at Port Douglas. But they're setting up another like sister or satellite system down here, not far from where we are in our lab here. And they're running their systems according to the Triton method. They're actually got refugiums, pretty much started discussing that with us before they built the entire system. And we test their water. We sponsor their actual project. So we test their water for free every 2 weeks. And they're using, our products to keep them, the corals healthy and grow. So that's where we kind of work in with that project. And we hope it continues to grow because it just gives, I guess, an insurance policy. The more of these systems that are working around Australia, and they're looking, I think, at expanding over to Western Australia, down Victoria. Again, they're looking at having, I guess, more insurance that if there was one system was to have an issue, then they still have genetic material that's linked that they can actually still fall back on if they need it. We work with the Australian Institute of Marine Science, like I mentioned, AIMS. They're doing a lot of work on coral resilience, looking at heat stress adaptation by a lot of the corals, and genetic adaptation. They're trying to see if there's any changes to the actual even the zooxanthellae that lives in the coral itself, to see if there's, I guess, evolution or adaptation as the heat becomes an issue in certain areas. Do those corals change in any way to allow them to cope with that heat stress? So that's a lot of work they're doing. Again, we're testing the water for them. They used to have an ICP, but I think they found it wasn't cost effective. So they're working with us to get a lot of their water tested to see where things are at. The Resilient Reefs Foundation. They've got a slightly different model to the Forever Reef project. They actually have the ability to go on sites, and there's coral from those sites. They put on trees. They have these kind of hanging trees where they're actually in the ocean. So they're not putting coral out of the ocean and back on land and then back into the ocean. They're just putting these corals onto frags onto trees and seeing how they can grow out. So it's a different model, but again, it's looking at how do they restore areas of the reef that have been damaged from heat stress. Cyclones are a common kind of natural event over here. Cyclones are like your hurricanes, I guess. And we get them every year. Generally, every year they hit some part of the reef. They're extremely destructive in the area that they hit. I know that some of the divers at Cairns Marine have been to sites directly after a cyclone's been over the top, and they explained it's almost like the reef's been sandblasted. It's just bare rock, and it's a natural occurrence. It's part of the cycle. You call it disturbance theory. So it takes out an area, and then these other coral will settle in that area. When the conditions change, get back to normal. And that's where I guess you do see areas that might need to be restored if in future there was, the inability for the reef to bounce back. Monsoon Aquatics, that's another collection company. They're also collecting wild, but they're pushing more and more into actually spawning coral in recirculating systems. So I think they're doing things like the homophilias, acanthastria. They're really pushing on that. They get a lot of government grants behind them to help them to do that. But yeah, it's quite exciting. Dr. Lou Chow was there, and he's we always enjoy catching up with Lou when we see him. But they're sending their water at certain times to check, again, their parameters through our lab. All right, so now I'll just talk a little bit about this tank behind me, and we affectionately call it the TRITON 2.0 because it's the second. ESAN's first tank was kind of the 1.0. The difference and uniqueness, I guess, to this aquarium, and it was a bit of a point of discussion when ESAN and I were talking and planning this setup, was I pushed a bit more for it to be more of a GBR biotope. I guess we are limited already to the corals that we can have in this tank because you're not allowed to import corals into Australia, but we can get some corals from places like WA. So there is a certain species that rules out, which I think ESAN agreed to the idea at the time. I think he's had a few regrets since because there's some fish and some corals that he kind of really likes that he can't have now. But yeah, I think it makes it it's a bit more fitting. We're based in Cairns to have fish and coral. We've got plenty of options. We don't need to have a powder blue. We don't need an Achilles. We can have the kind of equivalent species that are on our doorstep. And I think that's, I'm really happy we went that way. We're running the full Triton method, of course. This tank has been set up for just over 4 months now. And when we set it up, we put in about 400 pounds of live rock straight from out on the reef. We actually didn't even hit the Cairns Marine system. It came off the boat and we put it straight in here. Through the process, obviously it had a little rise and fall of the ammonia and nothing too drastic, but we did need to do a water change. And we haven't done a water change on this system still. So with that being the case, we've got quite a lot of fish. I don't know if you can see, we've got schools of Anthias, wrasse, tangs, quite a few fish. We actually put the fish in quite early to get the system going. And already we have, after I think 2.5, 3 months, we had undetectable nitrate and phosphate. So the system is running really well. It's kind of what we call an outer barrier. It's an outer barrier system. It's an outer barrier biotope. So we're focusing on a lot of the fish that come from that region, that area of the reef. And the corals we're keeping are, again, predominantly SPS that come from that outer barrier area, which they generally don't have detectable levels of nitrate and phosphate. So low nutrient, very ultra low nutrient system. We've got quite a lot of flow. So I did mean to change the litres per hour to gallons. So I think you divide it roughly by 4 to get you. So we've got a lot of flow. That's just within the aquarium. We have, 60,000 litres per hour of just running water around the actual display tank. So we've got some large inline, like recirculating pumps that are just inline. They push the water in different directions at different times. And we've got 4 in total, which do that job. And the idea, we want to move large volumes of water, but not with any direct really pressure. So we don't want to, be blasting little spots. So we have quite large, I think it's, they're pushing large volumes one way, and then it spins and goes the other way and the water comes back. So again, trying to recreate that way that the reef breathes with the tidal, changes. So that's where we were really aiming for with that. And with those different changes in the flow pattern, obviously the corals will grow in a more natural way. So that was something that was really important for us when we were planning this tank. We've got a return pump that's, say, 17,000 litres per hour. It doesn't quite hit the ×10, which we often recommend with the TRITON's method, but that's kind of set up more, or those parameters are more for when you've got a smaller system. When you've got a large tank like this, it's okay if you're a bit below the 10. So we're still getting a lot of water movement through the filter. And the key of having a large amount of water going from the tank through the sump, through the refugium and back, is you want to homogenize. You want the same water conditions in the display as you do in the sump, in the refugium. So you want to maintain that homogeneous environment between the both tanks. So that stops you having kind of changes and getting little spikes of different things. So that's really important. We're hitting that. The lighting, which you can see above, that's the Illumagic X4s. We've got 21 units. They're running at the moment about 80%. So at 80%, we're getting 900 par just below the surface of the water. So where the corals are at the top of the rock face, and we're still getting 600 par, or just over 600 par at the bottom of the tank, and that's at 80%. So again, for the corals we want to keep, we find that lighting is really important. I've got a piece of Icefire Echinata, which I'll show a close-up picture of later. And with the ultra-low nutrients and the lighting we're providing, that's gone from, when we got it from Cairns Marine, it was kind of brown with blue tips. It's now completely blue, all the browns dropped out, and it's just a stunning piece, and it's growing really well. It's got quite a few growth tips on it, so it's doing very well, and it's not an easy coral to keep. As I said before, it's an outer barrier GBR biotope, so the fish and the coral are really kind of aimed at those. I've got some, we have the strawberry shortcake, microhabitats in there. Again, that was another coral that I think I got a picture of that I can show you, but when we got it, it was quite dark in color. The tips weren't very, you couldn't see any yellow in it. It was kind of white and brownish, maroon, red on the top. But in the system here, we've seen that with the low nutrient, the strong lighting, it's really gone back to the strawberry shortcake that I know out in the reef. It's got the yellow in the actual stem, and it's got those bright pink tips. So it's doing really well. It's growing, it's throwing out new heads. So I'm really happy with the way that coral's gone. Refugium lights. We've got it's quite a large refugium. It's a deep refugium. So we did put a 150 watt, 14,000 Kelvin metal halide on there just to punch some light down to the bottom of the refugium. But we've also supplemented that with some T5 lighting. So we've got 4 T5s, 2 white, 2 blue, to really give that broad spectrum light to our refugium, because as this tank matures and as the water parameters change, so too will the algae that want to live in that refugium. Keto is always good to start with, and that's where we generally tell people to start. It's a very hardy algae, but we've got live rock in that refugium as well. And that live rock is there not from a filtration. We've got plenty of live rock in the display, so we're not really needing extra biological media. We actually have it there so that it seeds other types of algae. So things like caulerpa, there's a whole range of different species that'll come out of that rock when the need arises. So it's kind of like a little package of spores for the algae that we want to potentially cultivate, or the tank wants to cultivate with time. And I always say, you can't decide what algae should go in that refugium. You need to let the tank tell you, and give it the opportunity to kind of decide, or the water dictates what the algae will be, what dominant algae grows. I know I actually heard a really interesting story. A UK guy was writing that he actually, after so much time, he changed his metal halides that were over the display tank. And on the back of that change alone, he saw the dominant species of algae completely change in his refugium. So a lot of things that change up here do dictate what happens down there. So, I think giving that broad spectrum lighting and the opportunity for different algae to grow with some live rock in there is something that a lot of people will benefit from as their tank matures over the years. I think Isen said in the 10 or so years, his tank changed the dominant algae about 4 times in the refugium as things evolved. So just be aware of that. Guys, that's pretty much, all I really wanted to talk about. I can obviously answer any questions about the tank. So if you've got anything you want to specifically ask about, I will do my best. But please keep in mind, I am the biologist guy. I'm not the tech guy. So if you're really techie and you want to ask in-depth ones, I may not be able to answer here, but I can get the information to you later. So
Did you start with natural seawater?
yes, yeah, we did. We actually got the guys when they were out in the Coral Sea to the boat brings back, when they'll bring the rock back, they actually have to fill up the tanks below for ballast. So those tanks are, again, they're pristine. We had the water brought directly from the boat on a truck here, and we pumped it straight in. So it's about 2,500 litres, I think we got. So yeah, natural seawater.
Do you continue to use natural seawater in there with any changes?
We definitely prefer, we're very lucky, obviously being
Yeah.
we have access to natural seawater. It's one of those things. Again, we haven't needed a water change, but if we do
Right.
have some water here that
That's the plan though, is to use it. Yeah.
we would definitely use it if needed. Yeah. If the clams spawned or something like that happened at Isan's tank, it was one of the only reasons he had to do a water change, was his giant clam spawned and it threw out so much eggs and sperm and it just completely crashed. Not crashed, because he was able to do water changes, but that was the only need he had for water change.
I didn't go into this thinking I was going to ask this, but I'm going to now. What are your thoughts on using pre-made RODI salt mix versus using natural seawater?
I always of the opinion, if you can gain access to natural seawater, I find that would be the ideal. If it's obviously good quality. Some areas you're unable to get that. There's nothing wrong with using a salt mix with RODI. It's most of the salts, the high quality salts on the market have really got to a level where they're good to use. And again, it's dependent on how much you use. If you're doing a 10% water change, it's not so much of an issue. If you're doing a large 50% water change, it can be more of a harsh change. We always will prefer to use natural seawater if you can get access to it. So that's hopefully answers your question.
Yeah, it does, and I can't figure out how to turn the camera on my phone, so apologies. I live very near the Carolina coast, just a couple miles, and I have always debated on trying to either convert or set up a smaller system to just try it out because it's really easy for me to go and get it from the ocean. And I was curious what your thoughts were on that.
There's some times that you have to be careful. Obviously, after heavy rainfall can be an issue. Salinity. I'm not sure how much farming is in the area, but you get a lot of organic phosphate
Yeah.
wash. So that's something. Organic phosphate isn't that dangerous for coral, but as in it will when it goes in, it's actually not. You can't even read it with a Hannah checker because it's inorganic. Sorry, it's organic. Whereas most of your phosphate readers and Hannah checker and other things, they only look at your reactive phosphate. So it's a bit of an unseen thing, and over time it will change across into reactive phosphate, and that's when you'll see it on your checker. So I think when you're collecting on the incoming or the high tide is important. You don't want to be doing it when everything's washing out from the coast. So yeah, there could be a few factors if you're collecting your own water to be careful. But if you've got a contractor, they generally know the best times to actually get the water because that's their job.
Yeah, interesting. I've always thought about just doing just a rudimentary ICP just to see what happens and what comes back.
A lot of people do, Lacey.
Yeah.
A lot of people just go and get some samples at the ideal time they want to go and collect. And they send it in and get checked to see if there's any heavy metals or anything that potential issues. You will see if there's high organic phosphate in that water because we test for phosphorus, which breaks all forms of phosphate down. So you will see if that water is high in nutrient, high in phosphate. So there's a value there if you do want to run a test.
Okay. Thank you.
Pleasure.
So what's your favorite part about your job now?
Oh, I'd say definitely coming in every day and like it's a bit of a time killer, I will say, this tank. Like I get up in the morning, first thing I do after I've said hello to my wife and children, I jump on the aquatronic and see what my alkalinity is. Obviously, as most of you know, like, the consumption of alkalinity is really almost like, a direct view into your coral growth. If you're adding and you're seeing that, at any time, we're all going for stability, adding and getting a stable thing. But as your corals grow, they're going to consume more if you're adding the same amount. We don't have it set up so that if it reads lower, it automatically adjusts the dosing. We like to do all that manually. So call us old school, but Esan and I both there's always an element of mistrust of things that are outside. So we're a bit old school. We still test our alkalinity ourselves using titration. We've also got the NDOC we can send over, but we don't. We generally do it here because it's quick and we can find out things straight away. But excuse me, I get the start of my day. I'm checking if we've got any change in our alkalinity. I want to see that kind of always getting consumed, and then over time that we decide to bump up the dosing of the different elements. So yeah, I enjoy that. And then after that, after I've done my emails and answered whatever I need to do, I'm very quick to get in here to the lab. So it's definitely become a bit of an office magnet. I didn't enjoy coming into here as much as I do now. So, and the first 20 or 30 minutes is pretty much spent just looking at all the different parts of the tank. So yeah, it's definitely it's a team job. We've got obviously Esan's it's his baby. It's my baby. And also our lab tech, Sean, he's actually an aquarium guy too. He's got a reef tank at home, but he's very much a part of everything that goes on here. And Esan and I will be in Reefapalooza, so we won't be here to do all the things that need to be done. And that's when Sean will take the reins. And we've got to feed the fish because we've got Anthias. We're feeding them 3 times a day with live, freshly hatched Artemia. So
They're voracious little eaters.
They are.
Yeah.
But we're hoping as the refugium matures that we can kind of pull that back a little bit because it'll get a lot of food from the actual pods that live in the refugium. But at the moment, yeah, so it's a labor of love. We come in, and Esan likes feeding his fish, so he's definitely a feeder, we call him.
So like being able to go out and dive the reef, have you ever wanted to like take your favorite section of the reef and try to recreate it in an aquarium, almost as close as you can to what you see, like same species of corals and fish, and just try to recreate that one little micro environment?
That's a real high level, I guess a dream that I think I know. I love exactly what you're talking about. It's always a bit of a thing that when you go out in the reef, it's quite interesting that you see obviously species, but the colors, aren't popping like generally you see on a postcard or even in some people's reef tanks. You'll see a lot of brown, and that's just on a piece of beautiful reef, you might only see a few, really nicely colored. So that being the case, I love the idea of that really specific biotope. I haven't got the kind of opportunity to do something that far, fully into it, but I guess this was as close as we felt we could do while still kind of hitting the wow factor.
Yeah, because that's the one thing that I enjoy about like freshwater aquascaping, because they almost capture the picture of one scene really, really well.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Heiko, and sad to hear of his passing this week. He actually came to Cairns a few times, and I was lucky enough to go to dinner with him. He was really one of the kind of pioneers of the biotope. Obviously, it was taken to another level with Japan, with Takeshi Amano. But I'm a freshwater. I'm a hobbyist in lots of ways. I've got 2 freshwater tanks at home, and I try and recreate my little idea of what I'm going for my children. It's kind of good now. I've got the ability to play with my little freshwater tanks for my kids, and then come here and play with my saltwater tank, and bring my kids out here as well, and they can get an appreciation for the reef tank. They're a bit young to go out too much. We have taken them out in the reef, but they're still a bit young to really take advantage of all the different parts of it. But in time, I think that they'll definitely be out there a lot more with me.
Yeah, I definitely would like to see more of that in the saltwater trade, instead of like stacks of rocks and a random collection of corals.
I really was part of me trying to push for at least sticking to the species that we have here. I kind of get it. It's the collector in me. When I go and look at tanks and I see, again, Acanthastria and Scolymia homophilia sitting in a tank right next to a strawberry shortcake, knowing that the habitats that those 2 corals coming from is so separate, so diverse. It's almost like an environmental barrier between the areas those 2 are collected. One being very coastal, and one being right out on the edge of the barrier reef. So no doubt, if you're trying to do that, I think it's important. And a lot of hobbyists buy these corals because they look nice, or they've seen them online, and the colors are amazing. They go into it without realizing the difficulty of what they're trying to recreate, what they're trying to accomplish, which is keeping a coral from a very turbid environment with a coral and higher nutrient, or how can I say it? The ability to handle higher nutrient, with a coral that's coming from right on the outer barrier, which is very intolerant of change. So it can be done. Don't get me wrong. You can feed those kind of the LPS more and make sure they're getting what they need, and then trying to keep the nutrient down for the SPS outer barrier. So that's, if you're trying to do that, you can do it. It's just harder, and that's where, if you stick to a biotope, I think a lot more people will have more success, and not make things difficult, because it's hobby is about enjoyment, not work. That's why I like not water changing. I don't like water change.
I think that has more character. I mean, I really like that you've kind of stick to a region, because the other way is kind of like the Pokemon way of, reef keeping, catching them all and trying to keep them all together.
Yep. Oh yeah, the collection. Yeah, I've got one of those. I've got one of those. Got one of those. You know, I think it also takes the focus and the appreciation of a lot of species that are stunning. They kind of get overlooked. That's something I think that this tank will shine a light on, some really kind of unappreciated, at least again, GBR fish that don't have to be expensive. They're not necessarily, you know, the $300 or $400 or $800 fish, but they are stunning in a display where you can really see them close up, and they're kind of the unsung heroes. One of my favorite fish is the Halicoaries melanurus, and that's, I always say, ticks all the boxes. You know, it's not, doesn't grow overly large. It's got all the colors of the rainbow. It's not expensive, reef safe, eats parasites. You know, it kind of has all those things to it. But again, it's not a fish that everyone was running out, throwing their tank.
It's also very active and has a lot of personality.
100%. Yeah, more boxes ticked, you know?
When collecting the rock, is there a certain size that you try to collect?
Well, yeah, the guys collecting the rock are generally collecting it for the ability to be shipped in styrofoam boxes. So they're limiting themselves a little bit to the size of rocks they're collecting. And those rocks have to be kind of Tetrised into again, a specific box size. That does limit the size that they are actually targeting. With our tank, I made a special point of talking to the collector. I spoke to Lyle first. I said, mate, would it be possible for you guys to get us some larger pieces of rock that you wouldn't normally collect? And he said, listen, you talk to Tim, the skipper on the boat. If you can talk him into it, then yeah, by all means, we'll grab you what you need. So I just called Tim, told him I'd buy him a carton of beer, and if he could get me some large pieces of rock. And he's I know how to push his buttons. So he was really good, really good. Came through with some amazing pieces. We did give him some shapes that we wanted as well. So I kind of gave him a bit of a list. And I'm, again, got to be thankful for like what I have at, you know, being able to directly access the collector, directly talk to him. So I do understand it's harder for others, but I've got to take advantage of my ability, the connections I have, especially when it's for my tank. So yeah, I definitely got what I wanted, and it exceeded our expectation. The coralline growth on it was incredible.
So I know one of my favorite things about the old days of getting live rock was to kind of watch what came out. Was there any surprises that came out of your rock, pleasant and unpleasant, that you can speak about?
Yes. For exactly the same reason I love the live rock too. We have a lot of crabs that we've found over time. A lot of algae crabs, so not dangerous. Everyone probably understands you can look at the ends of the claws, and you can see the flat plates, or if they're sharp and pointy. So I've got a couple out that I wasn't happy with, but I've left a few in there that I know are just doing an algae job. The benefit also, we've got this overflow weir box, and it actually acts like a bit of a crab trap. So we've got about 4 or 5 crabs that have gone over and they can't get out. So we've got the ability to kind of, get them out with time. So they're really the only, I would say, hitchhikers that we really weren't keen on. But again, it's parcel of having live rock. I think we have one Aptasia that we already have. We know where it is, and it's going to be eaten soon we're getting a couple of, or 1 or 2 Chelman marginalis that we're going to put in. They'll clean that up. We're very much a believer that the benefits of live rock far outweigh the negatives of any hitchhiker. You can biologically, or you can actually, deal with problems that come out of the live rock, be it traps or other things to get those animals or the undesirables out. The benefit of having really the biome with I always say that it's deep inside the rock, right at the core of the rock, is probably the most valuable part of live rock that a lot of people struggle to attain when they're starting with kind of dry rock or man-made rock. they need to wait that time for that bacteria. If it is in the system, eventually, when they put a coral in there, it might get transferred. But deep inside that rock, and that can take a few years. And I remember back in the good old days, like we spoke about, where it was just live rock. I don't remember seeing all the dinoflagellate issues and all a lot of the cyano. And I call it the sterile tank syndrome. And I kind of liken it to a hospital where you only find some of those bacteria or things like staph getting into, areas, because out in the environment, they get outcompeted by other bacteria. Whereas in the hospital, they're kind of got their own space to go. So, and they've got the freedom. There's no competition. So dinoflagellates, I think the same. If you've got a very man-made system, very kind of limited biome, unnatural biome, then you give the opportunity for some of those things like dinos and cyano to really proliferate and outcompete. And it's really about bringing in that competition that really helps to restore the balance. So you get that straight away with live rock. That's definitely an overlooked thing with the modern hobby that I've seen all these years.
I do have a question, mind me asking. How do you deal with pests in flatworm eating flatworms and stuff like that? I'm just kind of curious, especially now how you use live rock as your main source. But yes, please.
Yeah, we're very, again, no surprise with the way that we run our systems. We're very natural, and I'm a parasitologist, so I have a different kind of view of parasites than probably others. There's a lot of fear with parasites. People work extremely hard to have what they believe is a parasite-free tank. I don't really believe that that's really impossible. I think that there's always going to be potential introduction through coral bases and things like that. And the work involved is to try and accomplish that. I don't think really is necessary. I understand people quarantining fish. Don't get me wrong. I believe in quarantine of fish, especially if they've been through a long supply chain, like you have to go through to get some of these animals, some of these fish across the world into your aquarium. As far as corals go, we do dip some of our corals, but not all corals, because some certain dips will cause certain corals to actually kill. Yeah, so we use the potassium-based dip. We used on some corals. Then we have other dip for our acros that we felt comfortable to dip. We didn't dip the echinata because we know that's one that doesn't really like to be dipped. But coming back to the live rock being there, and how do we deal with the flatworm?
Correct.
It's really comes back to a biological approach. So a lot of the fish in here aren't just about being beautiful and not the species we want. It's also being functional. So we always pick what we functional fish. A lot of the anamses, wrasse, we put in because we want them to be there constantly hunting for the parasites. So we believe, again, you're not going to stop parasites from going to possibly being introduced to your tank, but if you've got the biology there to deal with it, then it won't be a major issue. So that's how we address that.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that information, because in the end of the day, I always think about those things. I mean, I've been in the hobby for probably a couple of years, but in the end of the day, trying to perfect that perfect tank, really, it never brings my attention. It's just, it's like you said, it's very important to bring it more into the natural approach, like having the wrasses and all of that, because that's usually what I go for. But thank you. Really, I really appreciate that. It definitely gave me a peace of mind.
Here to help. No, it's really, I mean, I don't want, again, speaking as a marine parasitologist, I don't want people stressing about parasites. I think that even if you have a white spot outbreak, my advice to people is find out what was the stress that caused the outbreak. That's a good thing about the quarantine system for fish, is that you have the ability to let them stabilize, possibly treat the fish themselves before they go into the display. And also how you introduce those fish in the display can be part of the stress mitigation, because if a fish goes in and is getting beaten up by others, that's a stress, and that will potentially cause an outbreak of parasites. So if you can identify the stressor that caused the breakout, a lot of times it could be just poor water quality. And that's where most people often probably see the disease, outbreaks, is when their water quality is, less than ideal. And I think that if you can remove all the stresses and they've gone, if the fish is relatively healthy, like us with a common cold, our immune system will be able to kind of deal with it. So I've seen fish have a white spot and then over time just recover. It's not like it's a death sentence. I've seen fish with white spot and other fish in the system don't have white spot at all. So yeah, it's one of those things. I think you focus on making sure that all the important parameters are where they should be. If there's competition or fighting, obviously that's stress you need to try and to reduce. And that can come back to how when you put your fish in, the order they go in. Sometimes if you've got an established tank, it's not simple, but you can also have like a box where that you put the fish in and it's kind of in this tank, but not able to be attacked. And that can often give the fish time to, one, adjust to your tank's parameters, and also kind of after a bit of time, the other fish might lose interest in it before you do release it into the natural population.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Pleasure. I answered all the questions.
I have one more, if you don't mind. You were talking about not being able to acquire some of the corals. I mean, I know y'all have probably tried to acquire a license and stuff for to be able to get them. I mean, I don't know what the really question is, but I mean, why have y'all not been able to acquire them through licensing and all? Do you get what I'm asking?
I do. It's all right. I understand. Okay. So I think what I was talking about, the limitations, is that they're self-imposed limitations. So I said we only want to put in corals from this region, the GBR, Great Barrier Reef. So there are corals collected over on the other side of Australia, other side of the continent, which is West Australia. And they had things like Symphilia wilsoni and other species that we've kind of, by our choice to do the biotope, we can't put in our tank. So it's not that we can't, we can actually access them. I can call up tomorrow and get some sent over. But we've self-imposed limitations. There is another level of limitation, is that there is no collection, or sorry, no import of coral into Australia from any other countries. So we can't, no one in Australia can get Indonesian coral. Fortunately, again, a lot of the species are kind of spread across, but there are some endemics that we are limited, we can't get. So endemics in certain regions, Solomons and places like that, there will be some things we wouldn't be able to access. But, it's most of the corals we want to keep, we've got in here. So we do have a limitation.
Even in the name of science, you wouldn't be able to acquire it?
Well, again, we couldn't bring it into the country. No, not even with science as a reason. They're really strict about biosecurity, which I think is a good thing. I think we've got enough right on the doorstep here that'll keep us more than satisfied. There's a limit to how much we can put in here as well. Like it's only a 2,500, what's that? Gallon. What is it? It'd be 600 gallon display. So we always have the kind of, we're looking at our aquarium with a long-term eye. So, a lot of times you can go a bit crazy at the start and put a lot of corals in there because you want to fill all the gaps. But you look at that tank in 2 years or so, and those corals will have grown into each other and be fighting turf warfare, of which you're going to lose some of those corals. So we're kind of putting corals strategically in places knowing that they're going to grow to the size of a basketball or bigger. And we want to make sure that we're not overloading our tank in the early stages, because we know what's coming. So that's something I think it's got to be planned for. A lot of people do get a little bit excited. I understand, but you got to think, if you're going to be in this game and hopefully in this hobby for multiple years. You've got to expect your corals are going to grow if you can maintain those. There's no reason they shouldn't grow to large colonies.
You said
Thanks, Lou.
you said you couldn't have scamosas. They're protected. Is there a reason why they're protected? Are they going?
Oh, no, I
extinct?
said Tridacna gigas. The gigas is protected.
Okay.
Australia-wide. So yeah, I can get squamosa and I can get maximas. I can get hippopotas. I can't.
Yeah.
I'm not good. He sends the clam guy. He's a clam fanatic. I think we're also trying to get the Durasa. A blue Durasa is something that he sends. Really wants to get, and supposedly one of the collectors said he has seen them and possibly will get them, but it is a collection, and that's probably another limitation with some of the coral. Like there's some species that we really want to try and get, and certain color variants that we want to try to source, and we'll wait for the collectors to do that. And when they do come by those corals, they'll let us know. So we have got like a bit of a wish list. I know Monte Colosa is one that ESAN's really wanting to it's very thick, kind of stubby, but it's got a very unique growth form for the corallites. So I know he really wants a piece of that, and I think he wants a red variant. So that type of thing, we're just going to have to wait. It's just a matter of again, even the collectors, they go out there and they cover different ground at different times. Coral collectors are very visual creatures. You've almost got to put the picture in front of them. They don't know all the coral names. They don't know all the different, weird and wonderful hobby kind of things that we do. Collectors are out there looking for beautiful pieces of SPS. They're allowed to collect any within a certain region. They've got zones they're not allowed to collect, and they've got areas they're allowed to collect. And even on the areas they're allowed to collect, their boat only allows them access to very specific points on an enormous reef. So they're limited by the length of the hose that goes off the back of the boat. So even if you were to say, go to that reef, that entire reef's green zone, you can collect any coral on that reef. There will be very limited parts of that reef that will be accessible to those collectors to collect coral. And that's very much part of the, I suppose, the sustainability aspect of what they do. They're never going to a reef and cleaning it off of a certain coral because they're unable to access hundreds of square meters of that reef are just untouched. They also have to report everything that they've collected. So say they've collected so many different species of Acropora, everything's weighed. They have to then, they don't have to break it down to species, but they do have to say genus. So it's Acropora. We have 50 kilos of Acropora on the boat. And then that's reported back to the fisheries patrol before the boat comes back to port. And then it's up to the enforcement. If they want to be they got to say where they're going to unload the boat as well. So then that depends on the enforcement. If they want to be there to check, they know when the boat's coming back, how much coral it's got on board, which directly comes off the quota that each company has. So that's how they really police exactly how much is coming off the reef. If companies want to take the risk, don't prior report that they're coming back or under report. It's how much they've got on their boat, and they get caught, licenses, fines. Yeah, the book gets thrown at them. So that's a good thing. I really believe in that system.
All right, so I need two things from you. It's pretty random. So from 1 to 11, I need you to give me two numbers, and the two numbers that you pick, they will win a prize, which is Mermaid's Delight. It's fish food. It's about $25 for a flat pack. So if you pick the number of the person's name, they will win the item, and I will let you know who it is, and then you can reach out to me, and then I'll put you in contact with the owner of that company, and you'll get free frozen food for your tank to feed your fish. So I need two numbers.
Okay, I've got them. 4 and 7.
4 and 7. So 4 is Joshua Allen, and 7 is Mom's 16 Pro Max iPhone. I know that's not your first name. I know you won before, but I can't remember what your name is.
Congratulations, guys and girls.
Oh, nice. Thanks. It'll be good to try that food out.
Yeah.
It's great. I can tell you. That's all I feed my tanks. That's
So
all.
So Julia, we normally do duck races like the California site does, but Alisa normally runs the duck races. So she's not here, so I have to do plan B.
And hey, Matt, this is Melissa with the number 7. Go ahead and give it to somebody else. Pick another number, please.
All right, well that's on Julian to pick another number.
Okay, so still between 1 and 11.
Yep.
I'll go with 2.
2 is Danny.
Congratulations, Danny.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
Danny, you'll have to reach out to me. You can Facebook message me or whatever. You'll have to reach out to me some way.
I appreciate that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, Julian, I got a question for you.
Hey, Louise, how are you, mate?
Hey, do the collectors carry boomerangs with them?
Only the really good ones. Yeah, there's it takes a while to really master the art of fragging coral with a boomerang. It's quite a tricky. You got to get the angle right to get it to come round and then hit the coral at the right spot just to pop it off the rock. So yeah, it's an art form, I should say, that people got to practice. A good question, mate. Thank you.
Julian, sorry, this is Danny. I apologize. I have one more question, but you can go ahead.
No, go ahead, Danny.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if anyone talked about this subject, but I know I mentioned about parasites and stuff, and you kind of gave me a general answer. It's trying to get stability is key. But I do have this question. How do you deal with BJD, negative and positive bacteria infections and stuff like that? I know you have dips and stuff that you mentioned for just pests, but what do you recommend in that situation? How do you even find a natural source of predator that cleans them, or is there even such a thing? Yeah, because I'm dealing with that as well, and again, I'm trying to figure out with that stability goal, but I do have that curious question.
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and I think I can give you a bit of an idea of how we look at it. Surprise, surprise, very natural. We're not into antibiotics. We would never put antibiotics or anything antibiotic based into our aquarium. The problem we find with antibacterial kind of additions is, of course, you're going to kill the one you're aiming to kill, but you're also going to kill a lot of the good stuff. So it's not specific to what you're targeting, and anything like that's like a lot of treatments. It's like putting an algicide in there. That's going to kill a lot of good algae, or good, your refugium will get toasted.
Mm-hmm.
Same with I'll just go through. I'll come back to the bacteria, but same with if you're dosing something to kill copepod or parasites on the actual something that's kind of crustacean based. That's going to kill a lot of the positive, again, small bit pods in your refugium and other things like that. So being a natural system, we don't believe in any broad spectrum kind of treatment. When it comes to bacteria, the key, I think, is to, again, if you have, actually something that came up just recently, I think if anyone saw the Reef Retreat talk by Julian sprung that was Sir Julian, the ultimate Julian, I call him. He was talking about some work that has been done about certain phages and bacteria that will compete and consume. I'm trying to remember exactly. Again, it was him talking about someone else's work. But what I did what dawned on me when I was listening to that talk is that it said that you're looking to get a system that, or where these kind of beneficial phages, phages exist are in areas with low organic carbon levels, high oxygen. And after I finished watching it, I called Esan quickly and I said, listen, what I really enjoyed about that talk is it kind of reaffirmed why the way that we filter our system works really well, because we have a huge amount of water flow through, which keeps the water, oxygenated, large amount of movement in the aquarium. So you're getting the oxygen level up high. Big skimmer, massive skimmer. Always have a big skimmer, we believe. Over skim, no such thing. Again, lifting your oxygen levels up, and also the low organic carbon. So keeping your organic carbon levels down, that's something, and not dosing organic carbon. We're not a believer in that, because you proliferate or you encourage bacteria, and not necessarily good bacteria. It can be bad bacteria. So we've got, obviously, in this tank right now, we're running the environment which is suited. That's how I believe you do what you try to aim to have those positive phages, viruses that eat the bad bacteria, is you create the environment for them, then they come. You create an environment which doesn't suit the bad bacteria, and that will push their levels down. So it's really build it and they will come. It's getting, if you can actually create the environment for the positive organisms that you want, that is a big head start, right? Now, we do have things like RTNX, STNX for rapid tissue necrosis, slow tissue necrosis. That isn't working on a biologic, like an antibiotic. It's not an antibiotic. What it is it aims to create a change in the environment that's so rapid. It's like a shock. So it's just nutrient that is actually positive for your coral. But if you do what recommended, which we say the in-tank bath, if you can't pull the coral out, you turn all your flow pumps off, you get it as still as possible, and you form a cloud of this nutrient around that coral, it shifts the environment so quickly that the bacteria can't handle it. And it effectively kills the bacteria that are around that coral, affecting or causing the RTN or the STN. So it then dissipates into the tank and nothing else is affected. It doesn't actually cause any, it's actually, as I said, beneficial nutrient to the actual corals in the tank. But it kind of works the same way when you freshwater bath a fish. When you fresh bath a fish for parasites, you're using osmotic shock. It's something the fish can handle for a short period of time. It doesn't destroy the gills too quickly. It does popping cells on the gills, don't get me wrong. As soon as you put a saltwater fish in fresh water, you start damaging the gills. But you can kill the parasites that are on the body with that osmotic shock and then return the fish back to the tank where the parasite's dead. So it's kind of, if you think of it, that works, that product we use for bacteria, negative bacteria. And that's what he said. It actually, he believes all of the RTN and STN is a build-up of, it's all corals have a bacterial load on them, but it's when those bacterial loads get like almost too much. That's when you see, and when times of, be it high pollen, when you get organic carbon in your aquarium building up, that's when you see these kind of, it's almost, you can almost, again, set your calendar by it. Certain times of the year, these die in the middle, and they often die in the middle where the flow, especially they always say tenuous or kenty. When they get when they get to a certain size, they're very dense. It doesn't let the water flow through. It's very hard to get and kind of, keep the water movement and keep those areas, and you get build up. So yeah, I think if like we're growing we've got one tenuous kenty in there, and my kids call it the little finger coral, because when I actually had to, I was told that I went to Cairns Marine to get some food, I think, some mice and shrimp. And the guys there, the export manager and the domestic manager said, "Oh, we've got this acropora downstairs. We've got to show you it, but you can't have it." And I went, "Well, that's not fair. Like you can't tell me you got this awesome acropora that I can't have." And he said, and the export manager, Dave, said, "Oh yeah, listen, it's already set aside. It's going to a customer in Hong Kong. So I can't give you that piece, but you've never seen anything like it." So I went downstairs and I'm like, I went with the domestic sales manager, took me downstairs, and I'm looking at it going, "Yeah, that's pretty cool." It's a kind of like a, Walt Disney or one of Louise's awesome raster kind of, it's a tenuous Kenty, but it's multicolored. And I'm looking at this, it was a piece as big as my hand, like one colony. And I'm looking at it and going, okay, well, Dave's sending that, obviously it's already set aside for his, but I reckon you could just take one little branch off it, and then I'll be happy with that. So fortunately, yeah, Mel said, yeah, no problem. So she took this little finger off, and that's what's in the tank here now. So I was lucky. But I was going to say, the benefit of starting with one little piece is that it will grow according to the conditions of the tank into a colony. And hopefully it keeps, depending on, again, we can watch it. If it starts to get really dense and that, we might have to break it up a bit so it doesn't get that kind of potential for die off in the middle as the colony gets bigger. That's something to think of.
I got a question for you, Julian.
Go for it.
So lately, I've been seeing this a lot, and I've been talking to a lot of other, aquapora type guys, and deformed growth, stunt growth, and like you start seeing this wide open, kind of like coral lights on the very top, not smooth like before, whatever. Do you think is this the lighting thing that we're experiencing with all this bluish, violet, UV heavy lighting? Is it? Do you think that this is what's causing this weird growth that a lot of people are having lately?
I don't know. I don't know for sure, Louise. I can't say I know, but if I had to guess, that would be my first point of investigation. That's that. I've seen it. I mean, I saw it even at Worldwide Corals.
Yeah.
That's where kind of even Esan made the comment to me. And it's a question of, like, again, to my understanding, some people will not necessarily, like, we ramp our light. It blew in the start for a couple of hours, then it goes to full, ramp up to the full white light, and then it ramps down again in the afternoon. I have heard of people putting white light, like some shops even, going white light before they open, really intense. Then when the shop's open, blue through the kind of time it's open, and then they go back to white. So they're kind of not, it's kind of a false thing of what they're actually doing sometimes. So what you see when you go in the shop is it's all under blue, but that's because they want to push the colors and the different varieties and be able to say that's got 5 different colors, but they're still using white light, but in different times. How that affects coral growth, I don't know. But again, if you're running, if you look at one variable that we're talking about now, and your water quality is fine, everything else is good, you've got great flow around your tank, lighting's got to be one of the 3 fundamental things you would investigate. And the fact that you're talking about it with a very strong blue and ultraviolet, that's definitely something I'd consider. So I don't know though what it is.
It's I'm seeing it more and more lately, and the corals look, polyps are out. I've seen, and you can see them on videos a lot, but you could tell when a healthy aquapora is growing because all the coral lights are nice, uniform, and like all around the branch, right? And then you start seeing these ones that you see the branch kind of smooth and it's got bigger coral lights than the other, and it just looks deformed, and they're just getting this weird growth,
Yeah,
So-
I think I would be surprised if it doesn't. Most coral growth should kind of reflect what they call the nature's golden ratio, you know, the Fibonacci sequence. You know, it should grow in that kind of pattern that is natural. And you find a lot of things in nature grow according to that same pattern or same ratio. So it's, I think that, yeah, if you're trying, you know, I think with certain blue lighting, again, very specific spectrum we're getting with LEDs these days, that is potentially not, it may interrupt the enzyme process, you know, which is very important in the growth of the coral. Something I did want to mention, I forgot to mention earlier. Yeah, we found zinc to be, it was actually the Cairns aquarium. They were running their aquarium for a couple of years, or at least a year, and they were finding some growth issues on the tips of their acropora. It's different to what you're talking about, Louise. While I think about it, I just want to mention this. And they did find that on the edge of one of their turbonaria, they had die-off just on the growth edge. The main body of the coral was fine, no die-off there. Just the tips of some of the acros and the growth edge on this turbonaria. And we looked at their results and they were deficient in zinc. And when I spoke with Esan about it, he said, listen, looking at their results, I reckon zinc is the main issue. Get them to dose zinc, and within a couple of weeks, it should resolve if zinc is the problem. And I said to him at the time, I said, why is zinc so important and why do you think it's linked to this issue? And he said, well, zinc's a really important trace element for the enzyme that is involved in laying down the coral skeleton. And zinc it's kind of used like an energy source, a battery that helps that enzyme do its job. So if you are deficient in zinc, it will stop that where the growth edge is doing it, you know, laying down the new skeleton, and you're having polyp or die off on that edge. And sure enough, the zinc was added, and within a couple of weeks, I think a week, it all resolved. And I believe there's a real connection between strong lighting and people saying that lighting is burning their acropora because they're seeing, you know, burnt tips. I think that I think it's connected in a different way. I think that the stronger lighting is giving the ability for the coral to grow faster, and that in turn is stripping out the certain trace elements like zinc, and the deficiency of those elements, in this case zinc, is what is actually causing the die-off at the top, not the strength of the lighting. So the lighting is making it happen, but it's not happening because of the light itself. It's happening because of the deficiency. And I think that's something that gets blamed in the past for lighting being too strong on SPS coral. I think that's something that I don't think you can overlight with LED personally, with the corals we keep anyway. I don't think you're going to overlight them. Not when you look out on the reef where there's 2,000 par, you know, and some of the corals are exposed during the neap tides. You know, I'm not saying that's good for them long term. It does affect the photo. It damages the cells. But again, they're getting way more light than we could ever produce with any of these type of things. There's no way we can recreate that, and the growth will be quicker. I think if you can get that par up, and the white light, we really believe is important, but still get your blue time in the afternoons and the evenings. And Louise, we looked at this tank the other day, Esan was here when the lights ramped down. It was just the blue, and the colors we were seeing, they're there. They're all the fluorescence and the pigments are just glowing. So you kind of still get that, but I think you get the other benefit is the growth. If you're running the white light through, you know, that part of the day, that it's kind of naturally getting that light on the reef.
Thank you, Julian.
Thanks, mate.
Pleasure.
Pleasure.
This is Danny again. I don't know.
Hi,
But since we're talking about SPS and the high par, I mean, this is outstanding, the amount of par. But would you know anything on, I'm sure you do, on LPS, and how much par are they really having in a natural, like out there in the wild?
Oh, it differs. I think they're definitely not getting, I'll tell you what, I think the main difference for the LPS is that a lot of them are coming from the coastal and reefs closer, the turbidity of the water. So turbidity is obviously a hamper. It hampers light in those things. So although they're again out in the areas, you do find if they're out in the very kind of lower turbidity, the further up, they're deeper. So they're not getting. So I think your 300, 400 is fine for those type of LPS. You also need to keep up with the feeding. I think is important with those. So it becomes, again, the lighting can actually it gives the ability or the opportunity for the coral to grow. It's then about maintaining the energy requirements of the coral, so keeping the food up to it, and then balancing that with the nutrient load in the tank. But again, LPS can handle slightly higher nutrient. And the thing we also say, and this is why I think it gets confused a little bit, we run an ultra low nutrient system, undetectable nitrate phosphate. Not to say you can't keep, I know many successful reefers running high nutrient, like 20 nitrate, 1 phosphate. It's what we always say is the thing to be aware of is it's not the corals themselves that generally will struggle with the higher nutrient level. It's that you're giving the ability for passive pressure from other species of, like, be it algae or things that will take advantage of those high nutrients. So it's the pressure that they put on the coral that can sometimes cause, people to potentially lose coral. If you can balance it and not have those things become an issue, be it through having lots of, grazing fish or, herbivores in the tank, that's fine. But it's something that we kind of say we'd rather run the ultra low nutrient, which we believe a lot of the outer barrier reef corals are kind of, the outer barrier reef corals aren't as resilient to those passive pressures as some other corals that may be living in an environment closer to like the coast. So yeah, that's something to think of. But I definitely think I know a lot of the acanthastria that the collectors, some of the most, stunning multicolored rainbow acanthastria are actually not even out getting direct sunlight. They're actually up underneath a ledge, and the only light they're really getting is what bounces off the sand. It's like a reflective light. So they're getting very low light. They can deal with, probably 100 par, if that.
Cheers. Thank you, brother.
My pleasure. Still good?
I need that Triton schedule from those Illumagics.
I'll get it for you, mate. I'll get it for you. I'll work on that today. Yeah. Can't wait for you to come and see it, mate, in the flesh.
One day for sure, one day.
I'll keep you that. All right.
You got your passport ready, Luis?
Still, yeah, still gotta get it. Sorry, I'm eating. Oh, you caught me like right when I was stuffing my mouth with some spaghetti.
Oh, I got you.
Sorry. Hey, I'll make it happen. That's a for sure thing, man. I would love to go over there. And I won't be like Greg. I will go swimming and I will go in the water though. I will go in the coral reefs.
Mate, we've got a spot for Greg to go. We've got a specific spot for Greg where we know he'll be comfortable. Then we'll get him back on the boat. Then we'll take you out to the spots, and you can come with me. I'll take my spear gun in with me, mate. So if we come across anything that we've got to worry about, I'll be able to stay close to me. And if we see a nice trout or a nice fish for dinner, we can get that as well.
Definitely.
And if what I like to do, if I can get a fish while we're out there, I take out some lemon and I make a ceviche on the back deck. We have that for lunch.
See, you talking to me now.
I knew you'd like that, man.
So you've been to the US and Australia. So like what's the main differences between the hobbyists in each country? And you've been in Germany, right? You've been all over the place. So what's the main
Yeah.
difference between Americans, Australians, and if you want, I can not record if you don't want that information. I can end the recording.
No, that's fine. I think we've spoken about it. Even Esen's talked about. But from my personal experience, I've been very fortunate because I've been coming to the States. For I think I was coming over almost yearly since 2001, 2002. More so back in the day when I was working with Cairns Marine, visiting the big importers in LA, going to more public aquarium style trade shows. MACNA was always very much a yearly event for us. We'd always go over, and I was fortunate enough to speak twice at MACNA, once in Miami and once in Denver when Jake organised it for Denver. So I was talking more about the sustainability of the Australian collection industry, fish and coral, talking about cyanide collected fish, which I think is still unfortunately a problem with our industry or with our hobby. And unfortunately, a lot of people who buy fish from some areas don't even know that they've been collected using, bad things. But yeah, it's one of those, I guess when I used to go to the shops was when I really saw a difference, because previous to that, I would always go around the shops in Australia. So I can't really talk about what I could say about the hobbyist, because I think there's amazing aquariums in America and Australia. I would say there's more of them in America because you've got a much larger population. But I think there's equally skilled aquarists in almost every country I've been to, be it Japan, Brazil, UK, Europe, Germany. I think when you're passionate about something and you've got the knowledge you build up over time, you can make some incredible displays. What I did notice when I was in America and the US compared to Australia, because we're, I guess, a little bit spoiled here, I would go into a shop anywhere down, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and I'd be looking at, colonies as big as my fist or bigger. And that's what's being sold directly, like the shop selling it to the hobbyist. So you go in there and you're buying a colony. It really wasn't, you didn't see a frag or a frag plug in the shops, and people were buying at very reasonable prices, 30 or 40 Australian, which is about, $20 US, a large colony, fist-sized colony. Then I go to the US and I'm going around LA and I'm looking at going into shops, and all I'm seeing is like these little, frag, lots of plugs and these tiny little pieces. And I guess I realized that, when I'm exporting, say, from Cairns Marine to, be it Sea Dwelling Creatures or Quality Marine, those importers, they were potentially fragging them up a bit as well, selling them to the shops. And then the shops themselves were breaking those up and putting them on plugs. And they really were stretching, I guess, each of those colonies we were shipping from Australia and making, wine out of water. It was a real different mentality. And what the hobbyist, I believe, in America is kind of conditioned to is seeing those little tiny pieces of coral, but with knowledge that they will grow into something that's going to be, a colony one day. And my hat's off to the US hobbyists, because they've got the vision, the patience to do that. Whereas I think Australian, you're a bit spoiled. You go and grab these colonies and put them in, you've got almost like an instant reef in your aquarium. So, but I think that also pushed the US hobbyist forward. I think that made them really appreciate those corals they had more than they probably were appreciated by the Australian hobbyist. Australian hobbyists are also very spoilt because we have access to natural seawater all the way around. Pretty much where the population centres are, it's on the coast. So what we saw with the waters, like the differences between ICP tests for Australian hobbyists and the US is we tend to see very natural looking water parameters for the Australian systems, but higher in organic or in phosphorus. So higher phosphorus because they're getting this coastal water, which has often got organic phosphate in it. So obviously they have to then deal with that as an issue. America, obviously more so, I think the one thing Isan said is he saw high levels of trace elements. So I think in America, one, you're using man-made salt predominantly. I think the majority of people have to use man-made salt. And I think adding of different things. There's also the lithium contamination of some of your salts. So I think there's, magnesium can be higher lithium. It's just because where that's mined and where it's sourced in the US, it's a very common contaminant. It's not necessarily dangerous. It's something that will be consumed in the aquarium, but it's, definitely a difference. We don't see that in Australia, the lithium levels we see in the US, because again, you're relying on our waters coming off the actual natural seawater as opposed to man-made salt. That's a couple of things I noticed over the years.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Hey, Julian, but just remember, this is that change of coral size that you see is only, I'll say, dated around the 2012, 2013 forward. Before that, it was, oh, sorry, my dogs are over here acting up. Anyways, but before that, it was just like you guys, it was bigger pieces.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
So the fragging's really gone to another level. No, I guess you go to the shows, you see that. And funnily enough, you say that, Louise, because in Australia, we've gone down that road too. We're always about, 5 to 8 years behind what happens in America. And we've got now a couple of really strong ones called Fragorama. It's effectively like Reefapalooza. And you go there and, they've got the blue lights and the trays and everyone's got the orange glasses on. So yeah, we've seen that evolution, that change has come here too. And I think that's kind of coming into the hobby, one, from the influence of the US, and two, because collectors, I guess, have also had, they're actually, again, different, how do I say it? They have actually had reductions in some of their species they're allowed, or the volumes they're allowed to collect. And that might be flowing out that the actual pieces have got more expensive. Therefore, the shops have to break them up to make more affordable for the end user. And I think, that's definitely been a change here as well.
Yeah.
Shipping probably had a role in that too.
Definitely. That's a big thing. We've even got collectors and wholesale businesses like Cairns Marine and Monsoon especially. They've really moved to propagation and fragging. So they're selling to the shops already kind of encrusted plugs. Again, for a lot of those species like the scollies and acanthastrias. So they've kind of taken that where it was being done at the retail level, they're doing it at the wholesale level in large systems, and that's changed how the hobbyists get their corals as well.
Yeah. Hey, Julian, but you're right, man. Lately, our hobby here is basically, I call it microfragging. And, and I struggle with that too, because I came into hobby again with the whole microfragging again. And I even have issues with those pieces, like I have pieces that I bought that were bigger and they're growing nicely and they're looking good. But then I buy this, like quarter-inch, half-inch frag, and man, it will do good for like 5 months and barely grows, and then boom, goes away. It's like, I get it, but it's getting really ridiculous in our hobby here in the US, and I just hope that eventually it changes, but it probably won't,
Yeah, it's a cost thing, I guess, as the pressures of like saying even the freight, that's gone up dramatically. And everyone's affected by it. It all trickles down. I always say there's no such thing as a free lunch, unfortunately. The money that's increased on freight or even, the actual permitting, even the fuel that the collectors have to use on the boat has gone up in price. Everything is then put into that coral and the price of that coral. And that might have doubled in price, over the last decade. And that then flows down. So say a $10 piece of coral back in the day, exported for 10 US, now it's 20 US, landed for 40 US. It's sold to the wholesaler, from the wholesaler to the shop for 100 US, and it just it just flows down, and that increase goes right the way down. And there's two ways it can happen. It can either increase the price of the larger piece, or like you're saying, Louise, they break them down into smaller pieces to try to keep the price down. But yeah, it does affect what you're seeing at the end, at the coal face.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things you pointed out was really good was that when you're doing that much fragging, it's not like it's happening at one time too. It's happening at the wholesale level, and it's happening again at the shop level. So the frags are going through multiple levels of it, and that's a stressful process. So it makes them much more vulnerable to disease because they've not been stressed once, they've been stressed 4 or 5 times before you get this tiny frag in your tank.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I saw like that was probably one of the things I did find disappointing when I went into the US, some of the US retail shops. And I don't know, again, how long it was between them getting the SPS in before I walked in there. But they didn't look anything like what I like. I'm looking at strawberry shortcakes, and I know it's come from Cairns Marine. But by the time it's gone through those different systems, like it's gone through the stress of transport, which is a stress. It's gone through the stress of the wholesalers system, whatever parameters they're running. And some were really good at fish and some weren't very, and they're still trying to do coral. And I don't think they were doing it, ideally in the best way, and not really, don't get me wrong, there's some really good coral import guys that were working back when they were in the game back when I was exporting, and they're still in the game now. And I hope to see a couple of them when I'm over there in a week or so. But yeah, the time it's gone through, again, the wholesaler or importer, then to the shop, however long it sits at shop, when you go in, walk in there and look at that coral, you're not seeing a true representation of what it looked like when it was out in the reef. The one thing I say that gives, I guess, you hope, the collectors aren't grabbing corals that aren't, bright colored, attractive, right? So that brown coral you're looking at the shop, we always laugh about it, and I hear Greg and Louise talking about it, the brown special, you go and you pick up a couple of brown frags and cheaply, and you put them in your tank and see what they turn into. And I'm a real believer in that. I think that, you can get some really cool things quite cheaply if you're willing to give it the chance, and you back yourself. If you back your system, you back your lighting and your water parameters, conditions, then you'll get that coral up to where it should look, if you can match the conditions that it came from on the reef. And obviously knowing the species, at least that gives you a bit of a guide to what they need. I think there's a lot of deals out there if you can take the risk.
Yeah, man. I would love to have a tank where, back again with mini colonies or colonies, and I hate it because here I am stuck with a bubblegum tank, that's what I call it, what we call it in the social media is, it looks like if somebody stuck a bunch of little pieces of bubblegums all over the light rock, and and it sucks, man. But yeah, that's what we got,
Mate, I reckon get that. Just try the lighting thing. Just try it. Still get your blue fix in the afternoons and mornings, or evenings, and then just see the growth I'm seeing here. And again, let's just say the coral's been in there 3 months. It's quite impressive. And what I'm seeing right now is what corals do. I don't know if everyone knows this, but the corals, I always say it's getting their feet down is the first step. And you know, there's a couple of things that inhibit that. If there's a lot of glue used, that's actually a thing that slows them getting their feet down. They don't like to grow over glue. So minimizing the amount of glue you're using to stick your coral to the rock, if you can get that actual, the bottom of the coral, the tissue in contact direct with your rock without glue in between, or, you know, a frag plug, even having it on a frag plug with as little glue as possible, as soon as that coral can get itself, what I say, you know, anchored down, it's almost like a, it's got to be a natural, it's genetically programmed for them, because the most dangerous thing for them on the reef is for them to become detached and roll down the reef face into, you know, who knows where. No light, unstable flow, they're going to get rolled around, they'll die. It's death sentence for a coral. So I think they're genetically programmed when they go into a new environment, they get all their effort goes down. They push all their energy to getting their feet onto the rock. Once they hit that, you know, stability place where they've got what they feel like a good anchor, that's when they redirect their energy back up into the actual branching part of the coral. And that's where you see the growth. So I think that that's something that's not always fully appreciated. And I guess everyone thinks that glues are, you know, obviously coral grow over glue, but I see myself, the speed at which you sometimes, even if you put a coral and you can wedge it into a little hole in the rock, as opposed to gluing it in, if you can get a really secure thing, that coral will get its feet down and get growing a lot quicker than if you've got a nice big blob of glue or something else, just sticking that putty or something like that, because there are things that come out of those. It obviously doesn't affect the tank greatly overall, but it will slow down the ability of the coral to grow.
Is there any more questions? All right. Well, if nobody chimes up, Julian, I want to be respectful of your time, but thank you very much for joining us. I immensely enjoyed your talk and just chatting with a fellow hobbyist, and look forward to the next time I see you.
No, I appreciate it, Matt. It's really, yeah, I'm definitely a guy that I'd much rather be sitting here talking to you about reef aquariums and my hobby, because it's been my hobby since I was 5 years old. And, you know, unfortunately, I've got to do things like invoices and tax and different accounting things in my job, running a business. But yeah, if I could sit here and talk tanks all day, I'd happily push all that stuff to the back. I just can't. But yeah, no, it's great. I'm more than happy to, whenever you guys need to fill some time, and if I can think of something interesting to talk about, then I'll happily come and talk to you guys. And yeah, appreciate your time as well.
Thank you.
Thank
mate.
you.
Thank
You so much.
Julian, I do have one last question. Sorry, I know we're taking a lot of your time,
Sorry.
but so I'm a veteran, and my wife and I have been definitely planning to do a lot of traveling. And my end goal, just to make this short, I want to get a little piece of land, hopefully near a beach, and I can hopefully somehow get a program going and propagate corals from that area. But Julian, I'm very highly interested. I'm going to finish my college degree and all that stuff, but I might get a side degree on biology. But I would look forward to maybe we can connect at some point in the future. I know you're busy, but if there's a way we can keep in touch, that would be great. I do have more questions, maybe deeper questions, but at the same time, if there's a way we can, I don't know, get myself involved, that will be perfect. I'm not looking for pay or anything. It's just something that I came from passion. And in the end of the day, I appreciate the corals more than they think. They're taking care of me, and that's something special that I would like to definitely give back to. So thank you again for your time, and I guess I don't know, how can I get your information or
Yeah, Danny. Yeah, cheers, mate. I'm happy to, if you want to send an email, just send it to hello@triton.de. I think that's our support. I'm part of the support team, professional support team. And just say, keen to get in touch with Julian, that'll be pushed in my direction. So it's hello@triton.de is the email for that support team. And there I can go and talk to you about stuff then. But I will say something. as a
Yes.
qualified marine scientist, parasitologist, I really firmly believe that running reef aquariums and running systems at home, that's the education, really. There's a marine science degree, a marine biology degree, teaches you a lot of things about a broad range of areas. I always say it probably what it does help is to make you think in a scientific way and possibly how to access information, that's valid. But I think thinking in a scientific way is what a degree in any degree actually teaches you, to think like a scientist, think like a doctor, think like a lawyer, whatever degree you do. But I think that the importance of actually keeping reef tanks, you can still be a scientist. You can still think in a scientific way and put those things into place. Think about the logic of what you are being told. There's a lot of stuff that's out there that doesn't, even if you read it and then actually think about it, there's no logic to it. So, you should be a kind of like a home scientist and think about, even something like dosing your tank with trace elements. If there's a bottle that says this has this in it, and it's 1 mil per 100 liters for your tank, like, okay, but how have I got one coral in there? Do I have, is a tank full of coral? Like what is in there? So, something like that should be a logical kind of warning sign that you got to kind of question a lot of stuff that you see and what you read. So you can think in a scientific way. Again, even approaching problems like parasites and things like that. But again, we're also here to educate, to help people. The lives, ESAN does a live every Sunday. So if you've got questions, you can jump on there and talk to him, ask him a question like I'm doing now. He can give you a bit of direction on that. And he does it every Sunday, which is your Saturday night. And it's actually Saturday afternoon, I think. Louise, what time is it generally? Depends on what part of the US you're in, I guess.
I think in my central is usually around 4 p.m. So 5 p.m. Eastern time. Usually. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Very informative.
Yeah. So take advantage of those opportunities. Thanks, mate, for that. My time zones aren't the best. But yeah, I think that, you've got the ability to tap directly into a water chemistry guru. That's one part of it. But he's also, more importantly, he's an aquarist. He's been doing it since he was 12, which he says that was only 10 years ago, but we know that's a lie. He's been doing it for over 30 years, purely marine. I started freshwater. I didn't start doing marine until I started working at Cairns Marine. So I'd finished my degree before I started keeping marine tanks back in 1995 was when I first started marine tanks. But tapping into that knowledge, just asking questions. I think that's the best thing about our hobby. People sharing information, good information. And I think there's more out there now. Unfortunately, there's one thing that's got to be with information. There's being able to take the right information. And I always say, find someone who's running a really good reef tank. And if you choose to do the tank, try to do exactly what they do. I see the biggest problem oftentimes, people try to take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit from here and a little bit from there, and they put it all together because I hear that this is good filtration thing on their tank and this is a good thing for their filter and and they put this thing together, which in some cases becomes a bit of a Frankenstein system, and things actually can work against each other. So I really recommend whoever you find, whoever your guru is, someone who's kept a tank for 5 years and it looks amazing, look at what they do and follow it. And once you've got it kind of worked out, then you can tinker. But yeah, just find someone, find a guru.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julian. Cheers, brother. God bless. And I hope you have a great night. Thank you for everything.
Thanks. Be in touch. That might be it, Matt.
Yeah. So some people hang out, some people don't, but yeah, you're free to go and back to work and do whatever you're doing. If people are you're going to be at Reefapalooza Reefapalooza, California. If they're going to the show there, they'll see you there.
Yeah, definitely. Please come say good day. Ask us for questions. He says doing a talk on the Sunday. We leave, so it's Friday here now, and we leave Tuesday morning for us, which will be Monday night for you guys. And we get into LA on Tuesday, and Tuesday around lunchtime. And then I think we're heading to the show Friday afternoon. So, Friday morning we head there. We'll do our setup, and yeah, we'll be on the booth from Saturday and Sunday. And we've got some pretty cool stuff we want to talk about with everyone too. We're releasing a new idea, new product. So if anyone wants to come and talk to us at the booth, they might want to be part of the first 100. I call it the 100 Club. And it's really, I think, going to be something quite different to what anyone's heard of or thought of before. So I'll just leave that. No one knows really yet. We haven't released it exactly what this product is, but you'll hear about it. I think eSend's releasing something this weekend, just explaining a bit more. But yeah, love to talk to people about it at Reefapalooza, and love to talk to anyone about their tanks or anything reef related.
Well, I'll look for the Instagram updates.
Stay tuned.
All right, with that, you're free to go. We'll see who else wants to stay in chat. But
thanks, mate. Appreciate it, mate. And I'll
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk later. See ya.
Thank you.